Warning: this podcast may be disturbing to some listeners. Due to the graphic nature, listener discretion is advised. Welcome from wherever you are. This is the Demon Inside podcast. I'm your host, John Venom. If you would like to review another episode of the Demon Inside, you can go to Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and any podcast platform. And please, don't forget to subscribe and rate us with 5 stars. A new episode will come out once a week.
Time and space. Vast indifference. The universe.
We will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And welcome back to the Demon Inside.
We're now coming in over the beautiful promised land.
It was in the fall of 1978. Deep in the South American jungle, idealistic refugees from Northern California were trying to build a better life. Their leader, Jim Jones, a charismatic preacher who promised a perfect society where everyone was equal. It was called Jonestown.
Really, you have a heaven across the sea.
But there were signs of trouble. Defectors told stories of physical and sexual abuse. San Mateo County Congressman Leo Ryan went to Jonestown for a first-hand look. He took an aide named Jackie Spear. Months later, Spear would say the State Department should have warned them.
They had documents indicating there was guns being smuggled into that country, that there were drugs being smuggled in.
At first, Jonestown looked impressive.
Whatever the comments are, there are some people here who believe that this is the best thing that ever happened in their whole life.
But within hours, it was obvious some wanted to go home. Jones had lost control.
People play games, friend. They lie. What can I do about lies?
And as soon as word went out that people were leaving, that the gig was over, there were many more people that wanted to leave. And it got to be so emotionally disturbing because you had parents literally pulling their infant and toddler children, one wanting to leave, one wanting to stay.
Don't you touch my kids!
The defectors headed for the airstrip. Gunfire broke out.
I pretended to be dead, but they came among us and shot us at point-blank range. The congressman was shot over 40 times. And I was shot 5 times.
Ryan, 3 newsmen, and a defector were killed. Spear lay near death for 22 hours before medical help arrived.
When they lifted me onto that plane, it was like I had just been wrapped with the American flag.
Spear is now, of course, a state senator. And on this 25th anniversary of the Jonestown tragedy, Spear says the message should be about Leo Ryan.
He was the courageous soul that didn't take the answers of a State Department that said everything was okay and went down there and was really trying to get to the truth.
Hello, my Demon Insiders, and welcome back to the Demon Inside. I'm your host, John Venom, and welcome to 2024, guys. I hope this year treats y'all a lot better than last year did. So today we are going to be talking about the Demon Inside, Jim Jones, and the People's Temple. Now, I've never really done one about a cult leader, but Jim Jones is, to me, one of the worst cult leaders that has ever been. And it was because of him that I think other cult leaders started to follow his lead. Now, for those of you that don't know who Jim Jones is, if you've ever heard the word, don't drink the Kool-Aid, that's where this comes from. And I'll explain that as we go along here. I didn't realize, I saw this when I was a kid on the news when it happened, and it put a lasting memory in my head. And I just assumed that everybody knew who Jim Jones was until the other day when I was talking about it to one of my Uber guests. He actually did not know who Jim Jones was. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of background on Jim Jones. Jim Jones was born May 13th, 1931, and as a kid, he was a little strange, which usually is the case in a lot of these cases. He would kill animals and hold funerals for them. And a lot of the other kids that were around him didn't actually like that. He also he was very religious at the time, so he wanted a group, crowd or people around him that would look up to him as a minister or a priest. And he was always preaching the word of God. You know, demons know scripture, and they'll use scripture against you. And what happens is, during the time of preaching, he automatically starts to get a big following. And during this following, he himself decides that he is the apostle. He is the prophet. He is basically Jesus Christ incarnate. And even to some of his followers, he's God.
Jim Jones was a fiery minister who ridiculed the Christian deity as an impotent sky god.
I'm here to teach you about those sky god, pie, sky, sweet pie god. I'm here to teach you that what you see is what you get. You don't
Grace Stone was a top aide to Jim Jones.
Jim Jones wasn't a Christian. He was an atheist, and Jim used to have people bring the Bibles into the church, and he would throw them down, he would stomp on them, he would spit on them, and he would talk about using the pages for toilet paper.
Timothy Maurice Sweeney, his family, and many others continued on, believing they were following a prophet.
People were brainwashed. They all were brainwashed, thinking that he was the God, because he always said, I'm the God. He got the Bible and he threw it on the stage and he stepped on it.
When people start, like Jim Jones started preaching, he was going towards people that needed something, needed help. They were drug addicts. They were poor. They were on the low income. And mostly at that time, it was always people of race, people of different color, and that's who he preyed on. And it wasn't so much that they weren't smart enough to see what was going on, because there was a lot of people that questioned what he was doing and questioned his people's temple. But in a way, they were still kind of accepting, because he did help. And that's what, not demons, it's kind of a lie when they try to help you, because you start believing in something other than God. You start believing in somebody that's going to help you. And that focus gives you that, where you want to please this person, where you want to follow this person, where you want to be loyal to this person, and you're not going to question anything.
Debbie Layton was a member of the Temple Planning Commission.
Jim Jones was a brilliant man. Clever, deceitful, and evil, but he was very, very clever. And he read all the books on sociology and psychology and other cults and brainwashing, and he knew exactly what to say and what to do to impress and influence other people.
And this has a lot to do with what happens in the end. So, Jim Jones was a very good con man.
I was a very, very rebellious kid, and Jim used guilt to bring me into the church and keep me there. He said people from affluent backgrounds that are spoiled cannot stay in a group like this, cannot stay in a structured life and give of themselves to other people. And I was determined that I cared about other people, and I was going to stay in people's temple.
When you're in a religious cult, you're pretty much blinded, because you're thinking that everything is the will of God, but it's not. It's actually the will of this one man. And I believe, because we talked about this on last episode, it was one demon with two people. I believe when there's a cult group as this, that is on the verge of something that is tragic, other demons will come in and be accepted by members because the head, Jim Jones, is telling them to accept these demons. Even though he's not saying demons, he's saying accept the power that I'm giving you, accept who I am, accept that I am God. And by them accepting him as this, they're accepting demons inside of them. And so this group of people follow him blindly because they think that he is helping. And there's other demons that have possessed other people to confirm that what he's talking about is true. On YouTube, there's so many things about Jim Jones that you really should look into it. I mean, even if it's not from a demonology point of view, just as a person, because this is a man, basically, and this is, I'm drawing it down to the basic fundamentals of humankind. This is a man who basically took people and cut off the world around them. And he became their world. He became everything to them. And what he did was he took his followers, and every time people questioned his leadership, he would pick up and they would move. We will be right back after a word from our sponsors. Hey guys, I just wanted to do the Uber shout out of the week. And this week I had 2 passengers who, poor guys, I had to actually put them through listening to the trailer, at least the trailer. And it kind of spooked both of them, I'm assuming. So I'm sending them out a shout out right now. The first one is going to be Daryl. And Daryl I picked up from, it's the Pho 4-star Vietnamese restaurant. So if you're in San Antonio, if you're in the area, go to Pat Booker Road and see Daryl. He's one of the chefs there at the Pho 4-star Vietnamese restaurant. Tell them you're a fan of the show, and, well, that's it. No one is giving discounts or free food. So, and the second one was Jose, who's in school working to get his HVAC certification. And I showed him my podcast trailer, and he was very, I think he actually got scared, but I appreciate the fact that he was actually listening to it. And again, I wanted to thank Aaron, one of my loyal listeners, one of my true demon insiders. And I'm trying to hopefully soon get some T-shirts with the Demon Insider logo, and maybe even try to send one to Aaron for free, being a true Demon Insider. If you guys want something like this, let me know, hit me up, send me messages, and maybe we can arrange something. So remember, messages you can send through the Demon Inside podcast at gmail.com, or you can get on my Facebook, the Demon Inside podcast, also on X, which is no longer Twitter, the Demon Inside, also on, there's a couple of other social media sites, Instagram, which is Thread now, I'm assuming, and TikTok. I'm still trying to get more stuff on TikTok, so if any of you can help me out, that'd be amazing. And I'm still trying to get stuff on YouTube. Again, I'm doing all this by myself, so it is really hard to do. But again, you guys, thank you all so much for listening, and hope you enjoy the rest of the show. And welcome back to the Demon Inside. The last place they were at in the States was in San Francisco. And they had him on tax fraud. I don't know exactly how it was in the 70s. I know now that if you're under a religion, you don't have to pay taxes. But at that time, I don't know if they were considered a religion or it was a group. But he decided they were going to move to Guyana in Africa. And because he felt like they couldn't touch him there, you know, and he moved his followers and he left followers there in San Francisco, which was the main headquarters of the People's Temple. When they moved, they started creating their own society. And the government in Africa was already a little hesitant about it, because whenever you have people that are coming from another country into their country, they realize that they must be doing something wrong if that country doesn't want them there, or if they have to run from it. And we're talking about, you know, a good chunk of people. We're talking probably, you know, 1,000 people. And everything on the outside looked hunky-dory, like it always does with cult groups, you know, and everybody was about love and prosperity and peace and no drugs and no alcohol. But the only one that was drinking, the only one that was doing drugs was Jim Jones. He started getting the kids away from their parents. The minute they would walk in and say they wanted to be part of the group, they would take away the kids. They would separate the kids from the parents. They would separate the husbands from the wives. This was the time that they started brainwashing people. So when they brainwash somebody, what they do, it's kind of like a relationship. You have to think of this as a relationship, like a abusive husband and wife relationship in a household, where the husband is the abuser or the wife is the abuser, whichever way, but I'm trying to make a point. The husband at this point is the abuser, and he takes away her family, he takes away her money, he takes away every social outlet that she can have, and keeps her confined to the house, where he's allowed to go and do the things that he wants, but she is not. When you're in a community, like this cult group was, they didn't know what was happening on the outside walls. They didn't know what was going on in the real world. Jim Jones had already started talking to them about Revelations and telling them the end of the world was happening. He said that they were going to stop their way of life. Now, before I continue with this, let me tell you this. Jim Jones, one of his idols that he looked up to was Adolf Hitler. He believed that Hitler committing suicide was a much better way to go than if they would have captured him. He wanted to die on his own terms, according to Jim Jones, which is the same thing that Jim Jones wants. I think Jim Jones realized that the longer he had this going, the longer he was doing drugs, the longer it was all going to come crashing down eventually. On November 18th, 1978, Jim Jones started to talk to the people in his temple. This was the day that they were going to die. Jim Jones had already said he knew in his mind that they were going to die. Now, let me explain why. By 1978, there was reports that had surfaced of human rights abuses and accusations that people were being held in Jonestown against their will. U.S. Representative Leo Ryan led a delegation to the commune in November of that year to investigate these reports. He also brought news media with him. All these people that were talking to the cameras were saying that it was like a tropical paradise. Everybody loved it. Nobody was being harassed. Nobody was being hurt. And then all of a sudden, somebody came out and gave Mr. Ryan a letter saying that they needed to get out. They started finding out later on that people were being abused. They were being beaten. They were being showcased in front of the group of people during mass or whatever for punishment if they were trying to leave or if they tried to do something wrong. this was a way for Jim Jones to control everybody, because people didn't want to be humiliated or beaten in front of the congregation. So Leo Ryan took this letter and realized that there was more people than he had suspected. And so one of the families decided they wanted to go. And of course, with that, there was other people that wanted to leave.
People play games, friend. They lie. What can I do about liars? Are you people going to leave us? I just beg you, please leave us. Bill, we will bother nobody. Anybody wants to get out of here can get out of here. We have no problem about getting out of here. They come and go all the time. I don't know what kind of game. People like people like publicity. Some people do. I don't.
Once they left and they were going to the airport, Jim Jones had his assassins go to meet them at the airport.
So we're going down the road, and then they stop to take some pictures further along. When they stop, we tell them, don't stop, keep going, because something's going to happen. So we come into the airport, and that's where we all get off and we wait for the airplane. And I loaded onto the big airplane, and I was sitting right across from the door in the back. Okay, and then that's when we saw the tractor and trailer coming around.
They were all shot and killed. Now, while this was happening, Jim Jones was actually telling his followers, and there's a recording of this on YouTube. If you get a chance, it's very, very hard to listen to because you can hear these babies crying in the background, and you know that they know what's going on.
Jim Jones came over the speaker system itself, and he called everyone to a general meeting.
It's too late. The Congress is dead. The Congress today is dead. Many of our traitors are dead. They're all laying out there dead.
He told us that the Guyanese army would parachute in on us, and they would torture older people and babies, and that, when they come, we should all be dead.
But we can't live in peace. Let us die in peace. We've been so betrayed. We've been so terribly betrayed.
And I was just looking. Here are people my age, older people, younger people, and they were, for the most part, they were voluntarily taking at the time. They were voluntarily drinking poison.
This is a revolutionary suicide. This is not a self-destructive suicide. Please, for God's sake, let's get on with it. We've lived as no other people have lived and loved. We've had as much of this world as you're going to get. Let's just be done with it. Let's be done with the agony of it.
Jim Jones, when he's talking on the microphone to all these people, it's heartbreaking because he's telling people, don't tell your children they're going to die. Just tell them they're going to sleep. And the people that didn't want to die, they were either shot or they were injected with cyanide. So you would have thought that would have been the end of it, but not really. So when everybody drank the cyanide and they were down on the ground and they were dying, Jim Jones's people, our soldiers, would come around and check their hearts. And if they were still beating, they would shoot them in the head. So, yeah, they drank the Kool-Aid, but if they would have survived, they weren't going to because they were shooting them in the head. There could have been many survivors, I'm sure, but they wanted to make sure. Jim Jones, at the end of all this, committed suicide because he didn't want to be taken. So think about this for a minute. You have 909 followers that are all taking poison or killing themselves. Other people are trying to escape, and they're being gunned down, running into the jungles. They're being gunned down by his men. And Jim Jones is just there looking at all this happen. How can you say that this man wasn't possessed by evil? In his mind, he was saying that he was helping everybody. In his mind, he was saying that this was God's will, his will, in fact, because he claimed that he was God. When you think that you're a God, you could either be very delusional, which I'm sure was the case. You could have a demon influence, that the demon is telling you, you're the chosen one. You could do this. You need to lead these people to salvation. And salvation is killing them to go to heaven. But in reality, the demon just wanted to see death and destruction. And so did Jim Jones, because he watched it all unfold, because he created this whole mess. Was there a demon in the Jim Jones People's Temple? I'm sure there was. I'm sure there was a whole bunch of demons. And they just ate up all the suffering, and they loved it. And these cult groups continue today. We have so many different cult groups that are killing themselves for no reason other than they get caught doing something illegal. I understand when you want to be a part of something. I understand when you want God's will to be your faith. But you can't let man delegate it. You have to delegate it yourself. You have to know what's right and what's wrong. God would never want you to kill innocent children. And that's what they did this day. They killed innocent women, men, and children. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll talk to y'all next week. Don't forget to subscribe to the Demon Inside podcast on any podcast platform. A new episode of the Demon Inside will be released every week. Let us know what you think of the episode on all our social media platforms. If you have any questions or comments, go to the Demon Inside podcast at gmail.com or click on the link down below. We would love to hear from you. And to become a Demon Insider, go to our website, thedemoninsidepodcast.com. We thank you for listening and hope you will join us next week for a new Demon Inside podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell your friends. I am John Venom, and I'll see you next time, if I don't get possessed. The Demon Inside was written and created by James Porter. It is a production of Venomous Entertainment. Background music is by Lucas King. And the title song, Demon Inside, was produced by Rice Fulber, composer lyricist Peter Shelley, and performed by Conjure One.